I asked Ms. Bonner to go ahead and schedule this meeting to try to get an update as to where we are and what we can do to keep the momentum going. I do see some improvement. I see some changes, but I don't want this excitement to drop. We are the Garden City, and if we don't address this, we gonna change our theme from the Garden City to the Trash City. I guess it's our mess. But I just want to get an insight from different departments to see what changes they think we need to go ahead and put together on paper, so we have some either a code or something that is going to be able to go out to the public. We got to educate the public. That's one thing. Whatever we decide to do and whatever this group come up with, people need to know that not something you decide to change overnight. So whoever want to start off with some, everybody mail in. I mean, everybody puts together a package what they thought would be something that's good or something that'll help. So we need to put all that together and bring it back and pick out what we're gonna use or not use. That's with the marshal, the code enforcement. That's with the garbage hauler. But all of us ought to have some input that we can make our city look better and people feel better about being in our city. So, Terrence, I know Robert's not here. You want to start off with some changes or some input that you all have put together that y'all see? We go from you to the next department.
Yes, sir. Can you guys hear me?
Yeah.
All right. So what we've been focusing on over the past couple months was safety. All right. Now that's not a change that would probably help with the abandoned buildings, the litter and trash, but that is something that'll keep my officers safe while they're out in the field. So we've done things like order new vests. We are going to be on the radio system that's going to be monitored by the 911 dispatch. We've also just recently had a safety training class that was put on by the marshal's office, and they talked about different things as far as situational awareness and different safety tactics that we can use while we're out in the field. As far as changes to be made, one of the things that a lot of the commissioners, Commissioner Bobby Williams talked about is it takes a while for things to get done because of the processes that we have to go through in order to get things done. We have to make sure that we're giving people due process, but at the same time, it is some things that we could do that we could put in the ordinance to get a quicker turnaround to get these things done. And we spoke about that on our last subcommittee meeting. We sent over a draft ordinance of some changes that we would like to be made in order to speed up that process. Is there anything else? As far as the safety part, the sheriff's and the marshal's office has done a great job helping us while we're out in the field. We're still writing the citations, but we do have a marshal or a sheriff's deputy alongside us while we're out in the field doing our citation. We've made some changes, and this is our safety. I know, Commissioner, you might want to hear something about the ordinance change, but we have been focused more on the safety part right now. In particular areas, if we go in the vacant building, we have 2 inspectors that must be inside of that vacant building, or the sheriff or the marshal's office. Those are just a couple of things that we kind of been focusing on right now, but we are going to look at our entire process to see if we can tweak it here and there to make everything better for everyone.
Well, let me jump in, and I'm glad to hear you talking about safety. Safety is the #1 issue for sure. We want to keep all our people safe, whether it be code enforcement or meter readers or anybody else. That unfortunate incident that happened was very, very unfortunate. When code enforcement wanted to even wear badges back years ago, as a commissioner, I was opposed to that. And I see Rob's in the meeting, walk in, and Rob may remember, I was opposed to giving code enforcement badges because I thought that people wouldn't respect them as authority with a badge. Now, when the badge ought to represent something, and I know y'all got badges now, and you can walk in, and really people don't know where you're in code enforcement, law enforcement, they just see the badge. Long story short is, I'm glad to know that y'all gonna be communicating now. Because without the communication, you go there with a badge and nobody knows where you are, nobody understands what your job is or what you're out there to do. We talked a few minutes ago about educating the people. We got to educate the people that we're not going to tolerate what we used to tolerate in Augusta, in my opinion, to let people continue to do stuff on one side that they can't do on the other side. People do what they get away with. The more they get away with something, the more they'll do that particular thing, whether it's good or bad. Habit is just what it is. It's a creature of habit. Keep doing the same thing. But I'm glad to hear the safety part. I'm interested in what code enforcement think that we can put on paper or codes to be changed, that people will understand that we are serious about this, that you can be you can live in any part of town you want to, but you just can't trash it. Rob, I was mentioning about years ago with Badger, but in the old county, when we consolidated, the old county still think they can do what they did 20 years ago. You could just put a sign up and go in business with the old county. You didn't even have a license. You just put your name on the wall. But those things have changed. Now we got to educate the people that we're one big city now. We're not the city in the county no more. We're one big city, and we're gonna hold you accountable of doing what's right. I guess that's enough for me. But I was asking Terrence, was there any changes that he was proposing that we could put down that would educate the people to let them know that we're gonna be serious about it, and these are the penalties, or these are what's gonna happen if you don't follow that up. You got any comment, Rob?
Well, Terrence has been working on a code amendment that will shorten the time frames for an appeals process, and then improving or coming up with a new way of providing notice that hopefully will shorten the process. And then I think with the, was it 311 or Augusta Cares, with their involvement in trying to educate the public, it's Keep Augusta Beautiful. I think we're still going to have our challenges of getting people to be responsible for their property. Of course, if we didn't, then, if people would be responsible for the property, we'd have very few code cases. But I think it's just going to be a matter of citing them and taking them to court when that is the thing to do. I don't know if y'all have talked about the demolition, but that, I think we all can agree that would make a huge impact if we can go ahead and get some of these houses demolished. The more we can, the more impact it'll make on the neighborhood. And then we'll have the challenge of keeping the grass cut, but I think it all works towards redevelopment. We get the properties cleaned up, and then hopefully we can get developers in. They'll see an opportunity, and they'll come in and build homes, and then we get responsible property owners.
Rob, let me ask you a question, Rob. And you talk about shortening the process, and I'm glad to hear that, because the process we've been relaxed on that part for a long, long time. And it's trying to work with people, but people aren't going to respect what you enforce. If you give them X amount of time, but see, we did some, and I'm thinking about the boarded up property. We got some property been boarded up, and if you're going to shorten the process, we got to shorten not just to going to the court, but the process that we give people. House been boarded up for 10, 20 years, just don't make good sense. We taking on a lot as a city that belong to the general public. They're making the city look bad, but we saying we got to tear it down, but it's really somebody else's property. And if it's their property, they either got to fix it, in my opinion. That's why I ain't got nothing but opinion, Rob, because in my opinion, they would have to do something with it. You can't accept that. If I took my car and put it on Broad Street or any street and left it there and didn't do it, they gonna move it.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't be able to just go back and get it back. So we got to put some teeth in this ordinance and what we're doing here now, so people understand they got a responsibility just like we have. And we're going to be 50-50 in this. We ain't going to take it on by ourselves. I don't think we should do that.
Yeah.
Well, and with some of the codes, we can that works when you have a responsible person or someone with the means to be responsible. But in some of the old, and we've had this conversation probably several times, but in some of the older city neighborhoods, the properties are basically abandoned because the owner is not willing to spend the money to fix the house up because it needs too much repair work. Wouldn't be able to rent it to cover those costs. The owner is not going to demolish it because then, roughly $7,500 to demolish your structure and the land value is only worth $2,000. So they just, the property owners basically walk away from it. And that's why we have so many properties that we've got to demolish. I think in the past, we told you it was roughly 161 properties that are in the process of going through public officer for demolition. Well, now that's increased to 176. We've increased that just over the time that we've been having these meetings. And with so many, and that number is going to continue to increase for probably another few years. We've got that many basically abandoned properties or properties that are in the process of being abandoned, and they're particularly in the old inner city neighborhoods.
So what I'm hearing is we shorten the process and just see how it goes, because that sounds like there's nothing we can do. I'm just asking the question.
Well, it's, where we can get the property owner, when we're working with someone, a property owner who will be responsible, we get compliance through the property owner. But in the cases where the property owner is not willing to be responsible, or because they don't have the means or the interest, or we can't find a responsible party, that's where it becomes ours, the cities, to address.
So what's the word? The absentee landlord, absentee property owner in Atlanta, we brought back something, Rob, a few years back about you have to have somebody in the city responsible for that property versus somebody saying, I can't find them, or we walked away from it. How do other cities do it, I guess, is that a better question. Well,
some cities have a registration program, and we've talked about that, or talked with them, and the ones who will register are typically the mortgage companies that are managing a property for someone, or that they've got a lien on. But the ones that are like what we have, the abandoned properties, they're not going to register for the most part. The registration is already on the tax books, but when the property owner's mailing address is the address of the dilapidated structure, then what we typically find is that person may have passed and they haven't probated a will, or there was no will, there is no one responsible for them. So the registration the mortgage companies will sometimes use that. So say your mortgage company, Terrence is the property owner, Terrence is no longer here. The mortgage company will hire me to be the third person that's responsible for that property. And so I will register with the city. When code enforcement has a problem, they send me the notice and I take care of the property for you, the mortgage. But we don't have that many situations like that.
Okay, well,
And one other thing is that what we've started doing is on vacant lots and working with Becky and them on the vacant lots when there's a real estate sign put on the property and it's for sale, we will get in touch with the real estate company and tell them, hey, the property's got to be cleaned up, the grass cut. And that's I think working some because they have direct contact with the property owner.
Commissioner Williams.
yes, sir.
I think it was earlier this year where I was tasked with doing some research on the vacant property registry for Administrator Sims. But my biggest question to them was, how do you handle someone who doesn't comply? How do you handle the situation where someone doesn't register their property? They live out of town, they own property in Richmond County. How do you guys handle it? They couldn't give me an answer. And this is something that we talked about before on the commission floor. You've raised this question before, and I continuously say, I am hesitant or I am reluctant in creating or adopting this ordinance when we don't have anything for people who don't comply. That's the hard part about that ordinance. A lot of people don't comply from what I'm hearing from the cab.
Commissioner, can I jump in on that?
Yeah, go ahead, Mark.
So we visited Atlanta and they had that abandoned property registry. They had the same problem. They had no teeth. They had no way of holding the property owners accountable if they didn't register. So that was a big issue they had with Atlanta. That's why when we talked about them then when we went, I think it was 2 years ago, that was one of the big issues that why that system was a failure.
Okay, well, and then we can do. I don't want to.
Are you there, Commissioner? Commissioner Williams? I think we might have lost him.
Commissioner, if I can just chime in a little bit.
Go ahead, sir.
I don't want.
First of all, I'd just like to thank you all for acknowledging some of the efforts that we've made so far. Commissioner Marion Williams did indicate that there has been some progress that he can see, and we'd like to thank you all for acknowledging that. We all know that this is a long process. We are continuous trying to identify ways to address a serious concern that you all have identified, and we also know that it's serious for our community. I think what you're asking, Commissioner Williams, is to continue to keep the momentum going, but to come back with a plan that you all can see and be able to hold us accountable. And if that's what you all are asking for us, then I think that's what we should be able to do for you all.
Well, yeah, and that's what we're trying to get to. I think Commissioner Hassan, go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, Administrator Sims, I think it's kind of that, but it's a little different too. I think my major concern is when I look in whether it's the Marshal's Department or the Marshal's Agency, whether it's in Department of Planning and Zoning, whether it's in Environmental Services, and any other department that is involved with cleaning up, what you see consistency is some of the same language, meaning that everybody, is dealing with litter and debris and those things that are out of compliance. The real goal here is to centralize it as much as possible, as much as trying to sharpen the edge that everybody else doing. And you may be able to do that by centralizing it as much as possible. Some of you can't centralize, some of you can. And so that's the real issue. I mean, that's a good start in terms of the draft ordinance, trying to get us in court or whatever in a much faster process, trying to get some of these houses down, like Mr. Sherman just mentioned, because now we're getting up to almost 200. We got 400 and some that's on the list already. That puts us in the 600 threshold. When we know $4 million will take at a rate of $8 million. I'm sorry, at $8,000, you can take down 500 of those houses with $4 million. So it's really about, so back to just to put this in a caption, it's not so much of seeing what each one of them can do individually. We need to find out what it can do collectively and what is the best place to do it at. How do we house that? How do we utilize 311? When you look at 311, let me use 311 as another example when we say that. You look at, I think, 311, there, you have, in essence, you have a 311 all over the city as well. You got a stormwater where people call 311. You got a utilities where people use a 311. It may not be the same number, but everybody do all that need to be housed too and have one person over there. So it's more than just them doing that. It's about how do we centralize some of this stuff, that these services that we're providing, because much of it is overlapping services.
And so, you're right.
So the goal, sorry, Commissioner Williams. So the goal is probably like Commissioner Williams said early on in this conversation today, is to look at all of that everybody's doing and try to look at them, get all the language on a spreadsheet per se, and say, this is the best way. This is how this should be housed. This is how this communication, because a lot of time it's a lack of communication that's going on. Sometimes I call something, I can call a marshal about something we just worked on. I'm gonna give you a typical example. We just worked on a development in my district, a strip mall. And actually for the marshal to get to the place that he needs, environmental service had to get involved and potentially make contact with that property owner so that the debris can be removed. So environmental service did it. And then from there, the marshal done, I won't say what the marshal did, but the marshal done what he needed to do after they did what they needed to do, or in the meantime, what they done. So it's a matter of everybody knowing what everybody's doing and trying to centralize this at the end of the day. That's what we're trying. That's what the ultimate goal is. Just.
And I agree with Commissioner Hassan. One side don't fit all. In other words, we talk about abandoned property and boarded up property. There's a lot of situations that we're not working together on. If there was someone attacking your family, you wouldn't say, well, you know, I want my brother to get involved in this. I want my cousin to get involved in it. Everybody be trying to defend. Well, we got to do the same thing it is when it comes to cleaning Augusta up. For instance, there was a can of trash on some property, and I talked to the landfill about it. I had about 2 months. I called the clerk, had the clerk to put it on the agenda before we finally got some resolution about it. But it was private property. And then said, well, we don't go on private property. But if private property is destroying the communities, destroying the neighborhood, trashing the neighborhood, I'll say, and we pass by with all of the entities we got in the government, we need to pull together and say, look, there's an issue over here, whether it's code enforcement, whether the marshal, whether the landfill, we need to address it. We can't just say, you know what, that's job, that's not my job, so I don't worry about that. So we end up with stuff spreading out on us and getting worse. One other thing, cleaning up a lot. If you clean a lot, and I said this 100 times, if I said it once, if you're gonna clean the lot, we need to clean the whole lot. We can't leave the small vegetation that's gonna grow into now if it's a large tree, I'm not talking about cutting down trees and going there with a chainsaw and being a lumberjack, but the little stuff like that we don't do. So we need to do those type of things in order to clean up. But I agree with Commissioner Hassan. It takes the whole village to raise a child. That's all it is. Same. So I just think yeah, go ahead, Ben.
I want to ask Ms. Becky that, because I mean it's the same thing I heard, and we end up getting a problem. Ms. Becky, when we did that, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think I heard the same thing even when we just worked on the project that we worked on. And I'm not dismissing the fact about the private property comes into play, but do we need to put an ordinance or something in place, because you can't let a person property because it's private property and to Commissioner Williams' point, that it has impact in the neighborhood, that we can't take actions on it. So do we not have something in place from an ordinance perspective? And if we don't, do we, obviously we need to get something in place. So where you're operating from when those comments are made is private property.
Right. So when residents put out things in personal carts, and they're not the authorized carts, that's their personal property. We do try to make contact with the property owner to say, hey, you need to remove that. You know, you can't put garbage in your own personal container that you brought at Lowe's. You know, you need to remove it from the right of way and use the correct authorized cart. And in this instance that Commissioner Williams was talking about, we are down to one code enforcement officer. So I asked assistance from the marshal's office, and they graciously went out and talked to the property owner. And one of our changes that we are making, or trying to make, deals with this issue in communication, because they went out and did something, and they did it in their software, and we don't share the same software. They don't talk to one another. So it did fall off the radar. But when it comes to personal property, we tell the person, if we take it, and we will take it, you can't get it back, and we're not going to reimburse you for it. There really isn't an ordinance. We just try to educate and work with that property owner.
Yeah, but Becky, let me step in here, because I reported this several times, and it really upset me, and I had to talk with you about it, and I had the clerk to put it back on the agenda. It's not the container. They can put 25 containers on if they want to, as long as it's not impeding other property. But this was trash that was coming out of this container all over the yard and the neighborhood. And when I reported it, the report came back that you said we couldn't go on the property, and that you turned on to the marshal. The marshal had closed the case, and it was still there until I had to talk with you that other week when you said, well, let me get somebody over there to move that. So it's not about a container. They can get their private containers and fill it up with whatever they want to fill it up with. But when it's impeding the surrounding area, when it's trashing the community and it causing problems, there ought to be something in place through code enforcement, through the marshal's office, or through something that we can go by and stop people from just littering, whether they be voluntarily do it or let the elements do it, from the wind and the rain. We can't pass by. We wouldn't let that happen nowhere but one side of town. That's never happened in my history of 16 years on here on the west side. It's always been something where we say, well, we can't do nothing, or we go by there. The garbage hauler go by there every day. The meter reader go by there every day. The marshal go by there. Code enforcement. Any city worker get a chance to see that. And that's how we gonna clean the city up, if everybody get on the same wagon and promoting the same thing. So it wasn't about the cart. So that's their own cart. That's fine, as long as it wasn't allowing the trash to be blown out and thrown all over the yard. That's their cart. That's fine. But if their cart causing problem with the neighborhood, whether it be any part of the city, we need to be able to do something. I don't know about taking the court, but there's got to be some action taken to let them know that we're not going to tolerate that. That's why people do what they do. It's a creature of habit. They've been doing it for years, and we hadn't said anything. Now we need to say something.
Right.
Well, we should have said it years ago.
Right. And that instances, we do go take that personal cart, because we inform the property owner that if they don't remove it, that we will, and we're not going to give it back to them, and they're not going to be reimbursed. And that's usually how we handle those.
Commissioner Williams, can I have?
Well, yeah, go ahead, Commissioner.
I want to go back to the administrator for a moment. Administrator Sims.
Yes, sir.
Do you have all the, from time to time, early on a couple of meetings, we asked from each one of the departments as well as the agency that were the marshals to send us what service they provide in the terms of blights and what have you. Do you have all that data?
Through 311, we get data that way, but you did make a good point when you asked about probably having or exploring a one center, one way of having all of that data, because we have 311 taking calls. We have, as you indicated, stormwater taking calls. So if it's coming in different places, it's probably, we need to probably explore having it maybe one solution to address it all. I did like that suggestion. Also, when Becky mentioned about the fall through of the crack exports integration of two different systems, that's something we probably need to look at, as well as what I guess I'm hearing is about restructuring, seeing how we can restructure it, because it sounds like some silos, things are probably happening, but I don't know if it's actually being communicated to you all the appropriate way.
Okay, well, let me start it, because I think at the end you kind of got to where what my question was, and I apologize because sometimes I'm not quite clear. I don't make myself quite clear what my ask is. But let me go back to you let me mention why it was so important. I mentioned 311 and the other ones, other stormwater, utilities, what have you, is because what we find, if you check out with 311, they're the only department that seems to be cross-trained. They seem to have a general knowledge about all those others, the stormwater, as well as utilities, where utilities, where you have stormwater only knows stormwater. So there may be where we can centralize that, even they can stay in their respective places, but if we can cross-train them, where we heard the likes of Ms. Walker mention when Commissioner Fanoa asked her specifically, what do you need to answer more of these calls? And her response was probably 2 to 3 employees. And I apologize that they're not here today, and I wish they was here, but 2 or 3 employees that can help us to catch all those calls that we're missing. But however, possibly if the persons who were involved in stormwater were cross-trained, the ones who was in utility was cross-trained, we wouldn't miss so many calls. So that's why that's important. But now, so let me go back to my real question, what I was asking you that was probably not quite clear about. What I was asking you about it probably a couple of meetings ago, every one of the departments as well as the agency sent us their overriding responsibility in terms of what they do in terms of blight. So I was asking, did you have that information? I think they sent it out to all of us. And I think Ms. Bonner may have it if you don't have it. And with that being, and I see you want to get your hands on this, rightfully so, to let you kind of look at it and help us centralize this as well. But basically, if you can see their game, their footprint, and what all of them do, that gives a better opportunity for you as assistants in doing that. So if you don't have that information, you can inquire and get it all from Ms. Bonner. And then we can collaborate, myself, me and you, Commissioner Williams, can get together, and then we can follow up and do that. And then we can get to a point that where we can say, this probably will work better, and then we can come back and talk to respective departments/agencies.
Ben, let me jump in right quick, because on that same point, yesterday I talked to the landfill director, Mr. Mihal. Well, I asked him to call me. He called me, but the number showed up. There was 311 number. Well, the 592, whatever number was, I dialed it back. It went to 311. I held on for about 20 minutes, maybe 25. And I told the lady when I talked to her that I was just had a call from that number. She didn't know where it came from. I said, well, I had the director to call me. She said, well, it could have been him. Well, by that time, Mr. Mihal called me back. I told her before I hung up, I said, well, just tell him to give me another call. He called me back just normally because he had missed me. Talked to him for about 10 minutes, then hung up, and he called me back again because he thought the message that 311 gave him was one I just sent. So that there's a miscommunication as to how we addressing that and way the phones are tied in or not tied in. So that's a very good point. That happened to me just yesterday. So we're gonna have to find a way to integrate this system so we get the customer or the taxpayer the answers and the service that they need. That just happened to me on yesterday afternoon.
Commissioner Williams.
Yes, sir.
Right before this meeting today, I was talking to one of our constituents out here, and they were talking about 311. And actually, he was telling me things about 311 that I was unaware of. That you can go on to 311 and create a personal account that you can go into log issues and go back and check, and it's a record of what's going on and what's being done. So I think probably if we, it's like it's been suggested that try to tie everything into 311, so we'll have one central location that are answering these calls. It would probably be beneficial for everybody. And the other thing is, I've had a few people tell me that when they call 311, that they will get Columbia County. I don't know why that would be, but that's what they've told me. And the other thing I'd like to say, we're talking about property not being taken care of. A lot of people want to fight back with it's my property. You can't tell me what to do on my property. So we got to get them to find a way to buy into what we're trying to do in the whole city. And one thing that just absolutely drives me crazy, you can drive anywhere in Augusta and you can see a real estate sign sitting in the middle of an overgrown lot or blighted property or burned out property. Why can't we try to get the real estate companies to be a little bit more responsible when they're dealing with the property owners?
I think that's a good point. I think that we need to consider that. I think that's something we need to look at. We may have not done that, but I think that if they're gonna sell a piece of property, they need to understand that they need to clean the property up before they can advertise or sell it. So if we burn down a piece of property, we need to do that.
We also do see that, and code enforcement just recently reached out to a local realtor and had success with addressing overgrown lots. So we are also aware of that and addressing your concerns and related to this matter.
Thank you.
Well, again, Jarvis, I appreciate that, but we need to come together with everybody. Now, what you just said, and I'm glad it came out, but if we don't put it all together, if we don't address this as a team, and you got code enforcement just had some success, talk to somebody about it, but the other folks don't know about it. We all in this together, so we got to figure out a way to put everything so everybody will know the same thing, if that makes sense.
It does, sir.
Okay. Commissioner Hassan.
Yeah. Yes, sir.
The fact about 311, are you suggesting that we look at adding more employees to put together, or are you suggesting getting IT to tell us how we can incorporate all those things together?
Well, no. Well, I was going back to Commissioner Fenoy's question to Miss Kelly Walker from 311 when she was here, and she had given us a list of how many calls she was able to handle and how many calls there was missing. And he asked her, he posed a question to her, what does she need to try to be more responsive to people as they call? She said two more employees. Well, and I'm gonna let Mr. Fenoy, Commissioner Fenoy can finish, but let me give my thought there. I can let him finish. Somebody give us. So with that, I was thinking, well, but I hadn't talked to the respective department heads, which would have been, and I to Administrator Sam. I had not talked with Hamid. No, I talked to, I think, Saxon. I think what's his name is Saxon in utilities.
Yes, sir.
I haven't talked to them about what does that look like for their people to still remain where they are, but 311 cross-train them to help assist in some of those calls. Now, if we don't get that, we have no choice but to add on staff. We may get more out of the current staff if they're not there. But Commissioner Bernard can speak to that because he's the one posed the question, Mr. Commissioner Williams.
Mr. Bernard?
Yeah, I think that because of the high number of calls that 311 missed, we need to look at in our next budget adding a couple of more people to the 311 program. But I've been finishing up completing 8 years on the commission, And during my tenure on the commission, a lot of the calls that I've received about abandoned housing, about vacant lots, are the same properties over and over and over again. As a matter of fact, that number has increased because when they take down a house, then a year later, they complain about the grass. I think that in order to clean up the city, we've got to tear down, but we've also got to build up. And one way of doing that is that when we tear down a property, maybe through housing and community development, maybe through private developers, we try to have a plan in place to put something on that property. Or if it's right up the street from where I live, my neighbor called me every year about the lot next door to him. Somehow he was able to acquire that property. And now that we've added that property to the tax rolls, but we don't have to worry about cutting that property anymore. I think that we need to do more of that. It would reduce the 311 calls. It would reduce the number of cuts that we have to have every year. And then it would add value to our text digest, because we've taken a piece of property that the city had to take care of, and now that's somebody else's property, and they're paying taxes on their property. Another thing that really concerns me is the quality of services that people that do work for the city are providing. I called earlier part of the week about the fairground and how that property around the fairground has just grown up. Well, I rode by there Tuesday or Wednesday, and the grass had been cut, but it looks worse now than it did before they cut it. I mean, to me, that doesn't make sense.
And you're right. You're right. Let me say this again. I talked about when you cut a lot, y'all not just cut the stuff. You need to cut the vegetation too. We got it's a twofold thing here. One thing is a lot of these properties are too small to do anything with. The lots are so small. The house is not worth very much. And if you take the house down, you can't build another house on it because of the code have changed. You need more room, and the lot next door may belong to somebody else. They may maintain that. They don't want it. Then there's a lot of people are renting properties. It's been a big problem in Augusta for a long time. People are making money off of other people, keeping people in a situation where it's not conducive to live in. It's just minimum. And if I got Mr. Welcher, we talked about a modern day shotgun house on Perry Avenue. In my opinion, if you go down Perry Avenue on 12th Street and make a left, you're gonna see a new structure, but you can look in the front, look straight at the back. He agreed with me. That's a modern day shotgun house. But in order for somebody to come in and build some meaningful stuff, they got to have more property than that. Then they got to know the property around them is going to be built to that standard. So we know this is an old situation. We just got to look at it, eat the elephant one bite at a time, keep it moving, let them understand that we're not going to just sit around and wait. I just think that if we keep working together, we're going to get to the end one day. I don't know when, but we'll get to the end. Go ahead, Ben.
Yes, sir. Mr. Williams, we got Ms. Allen on the line. Ms. Allen, how you doing?
I'm doing good. Good morning.
Ms. Allen, we have two questions for you. One of them was from last meeting, and I think it came up again today. And it's about a lot of time when you call 311, we anticipated that, most times say you can call 311. If you're in 30907, you may pick up Columbia County. But then Commissioner Garrett made mention, even though he's on 30815, which you know is deep south of Augusta, that still happens. Is there any particular reason for that?
We've been working with our cellular providers, and we did get with Verizon, and they had an actual problem in the configuration. So we're working with them to get that changed. So it was some problems that some of the cellular providers were experiencing.
So do you know, is a timeline on that, or they've already fixed it?
They have not fixed it as I've been informed yet. I can get you the timeline. I know they've been working with it. Our guys been working with them. So it's more of a code change that they will have to actually make.
So when you get that, when you get it to the administrator, please, for us. Okay, that's one thing. The next thing is Ms. Becky, if I'm not mistaken, Ms. Becky, don't let me put words in your mouth. So if I kind of misconstrue what you said, please feel free to correct me. You was making mention about sometimes the systems are not connected around a request. And as a result of that, it falls off the grid. Can you speak to that again so Ms. Allen can get a clear picture of what you're talking about and we can see, can this be rectified?
Right. Well, the software that environmental services utilize for their work orders, in addition to the garbage collection monitoring, is Elamos. And our department is the only department that utilizes that software. The marshal's office has, I think they utilize CityWorks, and a lot of other departments are utilizing CityWorks. One of the changes, you guys asked what each department would be doing to change, and one of the things that we are trying to do is to get with Miss Allen's group, and we've had some conversations with the folks that are involved with CityWorks. We would like to move the entire vacant lot inspection process, cut process, the grapple truck, the out of compliance, all of the things that are not related to garbage collection. We want to move that into CityWorks because that is the centralized database, the work order database that so many other departments utilize. And 311 is, they're fantastic at it. That's where they're putting in a lot of the work orders from the calls that they are getting. Well, they're putting our calls into Elamos. Nobody can see what we're doing. Mm-hmm. We are an island over here, and we want to move our processes into CityWorks. And that's one of our changes that we're looking into make moving forward. There have been talks about sharing inspection capabilities with the Marshal's Department for overgrown lots, whereas today they would have to call 311 or call us or notify us that, hey, this is an overgrown lot, it needs to be inspected. They can actually, to what I'm envisioning, Miss Allen, is that they would be able to actually go in the system and enter the work order for us. And while they're there, they can take a picture of the overgrowth, and that would eliminate the need for an environmental services department code enforcement officer to go out there, and that a vacant lot notice could be generated. That's what we're looking to do, that other people within the county can call 311 or enter it directly, and that it would speed up the process of inspections. We only have 2 code enforcement positions here. We're looking to add some more, but when the marshal's out and about and they see things, rather than emailing us or calling 311, that they can actually go in and do that. And that's what we're looking to do, is to partner up with IT and to get our processes all into the CityWorks. The other fantastic thing that we see happening with CityWorks is the ability to provide maps. We have, in our database, we have every single violation notice. There's a work order for that, and we have to put it in a spreadsheet and send it over to IT, and they can map it for us. But what that would allow us to do is to revise our website to where anyone could go out on our website and click on 2021 vacant lot violations, and there would be a map of every property that currently has a violation notice. And that would be beneficial to a lot of different people. It would be beneficial for the commissioners to see which ones have been inspected. It would be beneficial for property owners to say, oh my gosh, yeah, that's my lot. And if it's been inspected and a notice has gone out, then we can cut that lot at any point during the year. So there's lots of benefits for us getting into City Works, and we are going to do that. And having the ability to other departments to see what we are doing and to communicate with us via City Works, we think would be very beneficial.
Ms. Allen, can you help us with that?
Yes, we can. And, you know, if I could just go a little further, what Becky is talking about can definitely be done. But it's, again, it's business processes and analysis and making sure that, you know, when we've had many meetings, because City Works is an excellent GIS-centric asset management work order system. And Becky is exactly right. But we've had several meetings, and I'm not sure where environmental services was when we were doing all this, because I think certain things, Elamos is more centralized or, you know, designed for doing the needs out at environmental services. City Works is more of a centralized work order, certain system thing, you know, so different departments had different systems. Elamos, City Works will not do everything that Elamos does for environmental services. And I think previously, and I don't know if Becky was the representative from environmental services that came to those meetings, because we had several meetings with 311, the Marshal's office, planning and development. And we went through and discussed all of the various processes and set up all the service request codes and everything else that goes through that system. So the system is there, Commissioner Hassan, and, you know, but everybody will have to continue to utilize it, and we'll have to know what business processes the Environmental Services Department would like to have added to it.
Ms. Allen, let me say, Ms. Allen, I appreciate all that conversation. I think all that's good. I think there's some more conversations need to be had. I don't want to change that system, then end up having another system that's not working because we changed that. So I mean that's another conversation for another day. I appreciate your input. We know it can work. We know we got an award-winning IT department, and we could probably do anything anybody else can do as far as IT. So I want to kind of wrap this up in a few more minutes, but I want to talk about those things that we can do to work together to move this momentum forward. Because I don't want this to drop off at the end of the year. I don't want to drop off next month. I want this to continue. Commissioner Hassan mentioned to the administrator about the stats that each department had already turned in. We need to look at those and see what we can intertwine together to make sure that we'll continue to work forward on cleaning our city up, whether it be overgrown lots and abandoned houses. We got a bunch of stuff going on, but we got to eat the elephant one bite at a time again. We got to do what we can do. And I had not seen all of the heard from the other departments. So thank you, Ms. Allen, for at least chiming in on that. We'll get together and talk about how we can interface those other things. But still hadn't heard no codes. I ain't heard nothing about what we can change, what's going to be effective to do. Now, I'm not in the field.
Commissioner Williams, can I say something to you if you don't mind?
Yes, sir.
Why don't yourself and I sit down, get with the administrator next Thursday, and we look at all the data that Ms. Bonner has given us per the department heads, and we come back and we make some suggestions per with the administrator's assistant, let the administrator make based on what the data that we currently have. We can do that. I mean, because they're telling us what they can do. And so we can kind of do that and meet with him probably next Thursday if his schedule permits. But I do have one more thing I'd like to ask.
But before you go to the other thing, and that's why I was trying to get this meeting together. So since they have already come up with the data, they can tell us now, or maybe gives a list of things since they put all the stuff they're doing down. What is it that we can do now? I mean, we keep waiting on something else. And,
well, we're gonna let the administrator look at it with him, and then he can come back and he can make some recommendations, or he can ascertain new additional information if need be. If he need to do that, so that's why I said we can sit down and make an appointment with him next Thursday. Myself and you, we can go in and look at what he got and and you know, him and his team can look over it, and we can get there. We can discuss it, and from there he can get that, and we can probably not even have this number until he can come back with some solid recommendations to the body.
Well, what if we meet with him and get if we get the abandoned lot situation started? When I say started, if we get the changes for abandoned lots, we sit down and get with him and see what we're gonna do, because we got to do something different. I see some movement, but I certainly don't see. And when you talk about clean the lot, I said again, we have people going there and get paid to go on the lot, so to speak.
Yeah, we can deal with all that next week.
Okay, well, we'll get with the administrator next week. Look at how we can work on abandoned lots. What we do when they're clean, how they clean, what we're paying, and all that. We get next week and sit with him.
Okay.
And then we'll come back.
Mr. Can we might have one more question? Mr. Administrator, I hope you don't mind. I want to ask Ms. Kelly a question if you don't mind. Ms. Kelly, how you doing?
Yes, sir. Go ahead.
Hi, good morning.
Ms. Kelly, prior to getting on, we were referring back to this question that Commissioner Fenoy asked you last time you was here, since the two or three more persons staff based on the volume of calls. We're not taking that off the table. I think you got me. Am I? Can you hear me?
Yes, sir.
Okay, we're getting an echo. If it's not bothering the back, I can continue. Okay.
Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
Okay. So don't take that off the table, because I think Commissioner Fenoy still wants us to look at that, and I agree. But what I wanted to ask you also, I was sharing, so I'm wrong on this, correct me. I was sharing with everybody here that I believe your department, I'm sorry, not your department, the 311, I'm sorry, is cross-trained. You know what I mean? Pretty much all the services that the city provide, whether it's storm waters, whether it's utilities, and what have you, I believe the 311 staff is cross-trained. Is that an accurate statement?
That is correct, sir.
Okay. Now, with that being said, I was suggesting that with the ones who have in storm water, the ones who have in utilities and other places where they have their own, let's just say, lack of a better term, call center, let's say they call center, that if we were to centralize all of them, and all of them were cost trained. When I say centralized, that don't mean we have to remove them from the respective locations, but it'd be a 311 centralized call system to address all those problems. If that was to happen, would you think additional staff would be needed, or that'd be perfect in terms of everybody being cross trained across the board? But you centralize it now. It may be sitting in utilities, but that not necessarily be who they answer to any longer. Are they sitting in stormwater environmental service? That not be who they answer to any longer. They answer to 311 as an employee per se.
I believe that those two need to remain separate initiatives. Bringing a combined call center is an effort in itself, and I think that would be what we would need to focus on first, if that's the decision of the body. And then based on our current employees coming together, being truly cross-trained, and then maybe a year or two looking at those numbers, and then deciding if additional staff is needed at that time, if it's the decision to combine the call centers.
So I might be the only one who missed what you just said. If you had a choice today, where do we start? Where would you start? Would you additional staff or try to combine the cross training?
Speaking from 311, I would say additional staff. Speaking as a citizen of Augusta, I think the benefit would be more effective if it were a combined effort. Okay.
All right. Thank you very much. Thank you very much for that. Mr. Administrator, myself and Commissioner Williams will make an appointment to be in your office next Thursday at some point in time. You give us a time that you're available, and we come in and we have a sit down and we see where we go from here.
Yes, sir. I look forward to it.
Mr. Williams, is your
well, no, I don't have anything else, Ben. I just think that we ought to cross-train everybody anyway. I mean, not just in 311, but there are a lot of areas in this government ought to be cross-trained to look at other situations and not just say, well, that's not my job. And that's the problem we got right now. We got people saying, well, I don't do that. But that's somebody else's job. Go back to the point I made earlier about the phone call I got from the landfill director. The number showed up as 311 number. It wasn't a 311, it was a 592 number. But when I dialed that number back, I went through a prompt situation. Took me 20 or 30 minutes, or at least 25 minutes to get to talk to somebody. I tried every number on the dial from 1 to 0. And I kept getting this prompt thing, because that's the technology, that's today's work. But yesterday it took me at least 30 minutes to get back to find out who called me, and it was the landfill director. The landfill director shouldn't have showed up with that number that went back to 311 when I called it. It should have been the landfill director. It should have been straight back to him. Whether it be a cell phone or office, shouldn't go to somewhere else like that. So I knew to keep trying. Joe Q. Simpson would have been very disappointed. I was disappointed, but Joe Q. Simpson would have been very disappointed. But anyway, thank y'all for the meeting. It's been an hour. We got a little bit more done here. I'm gonna keep it on the radar at least till December 31st.
All right, Commissioner. Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
All right.
Thank you.